Karen Tamley is president and CEO of Access Living, a long-standing Chicago-based disability rights and services organization that works to build disability power and pride and to break down systemic barriers to create a stronger, more inclusive society. Access Living is a leading disability force in Chicago and across the nation, and has a long history of doing what it takes to make sure people with disabilities can live the lives they choose. Karen is also the Treasurer's Office Women's History Month Award recipient for outstanding commitment and community service. Prior to taking the helm at Access Living in 2020, she served as Commissioner of the Chicago Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities for 14 years. During her tenure, she tackled disability policy and accessibility initiatives under 3 Chicago mayors. Karen is a graduate of the University of California, Berkeley. She lives in Chicago with her husband, Kevin Irvine, and their 15-year-old daughter. All 3 have disabilities and are actively involved in disability advocacy and service, both locally and nationally. Karen, thank you for joining me. Maybe you could start off by telling us when your passion for disability advocacy began.
Yes, well, thank you so much. It's truly an honor to be receiving this award. So for me, I was born with my disability, and I think the foundation of my advocacy work really started in my upbringing as a disabled child. I was born long before the passage of the ADA, and so really lived in a world where there was very little expectations for people with disabilities. I grew up in a world where I couldn't get on a public bus with my friends because they weren't accessible. There were no curb ramps. I was sent to a school just for kids with disabilities, and just really lived in a world that was very inaccessible. Had to be carried into many stores and restaurants because there were no laws requiring accessibility. So that was a foundational experience for me growing up. But really my passion for disability rights started actually out of college, where I took an internship for a disability rights attorney in Washington, D.C. And this was right as the Americans with Disabilities Act was being signed into law, and the early days of the ADA. And that's really what sparked my interest and my desire to really take my lived experience to make the world better for other people with disabilities across the country.
Well, you've done a lot of great work. You've had a long career in government. Are there any stories you can share with us where you saw firsthand the positive impact of government in people's lives?
Yeah, well, I really treasure the years that I worked in government because I see government as really an important way to make change for our community. Chicago is really on the leading edge on accessibility, given that they've had a long-standing office and department situated in the mayor's cabinet as a as an office on disability that's really working to advance accessibility throughout our city. And so, the work that I did there, it was so rewarding because you were literally able to see the changes that you were able to make that transformed the lives of disabled people, whether it was the work that we did on installing curb cuts throughout the city, whether it was looking at a lot of the work we did for folks who are deaf and hard of hearing in terms of accessibility, or those who are blind or low vision, just being able to see those changes that we were able to make out in the world, the number of CTA stations that were made accessible, that were never accessible to anyone with a mobility disability in the past 100 years, was something that was tremendously rewarding because you saw how these changes in our infrastructure were really transformational in the lives of our community to be able to get jobs and truly participate and navigate our city. So, it was everything from the little thing to the big thing that really was extremely rewarding with the work that I did.
That's great. Well, you've done a variety of work for the community. You worked at Access Living in the mid-1990s and now have returned as president and CEO. What does it feel like coming full circle with the organization?
Wow, it feels I'm coming home. I'm coming back to my roots of really where I started my work in disability advocacy, where I learned so much about disability policy issues, where I gained management experience, having served in multiple roles at Access Living. I will say now coming back, it's a very different organization than when I left. It's a stronger organization. It's a much larger organization. It's a much more impactful organization. And so I'm really, really proud and honored to be the CEO and to lead the organization, into the future.
Well, we've talked a little about some of the past problems and some solutions, but now that you're heading this organization, what do you see as the most important challenges for Access Living and the disability community in the coming years? Where do we go from here? What are the next round of battles?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the all of the disparities that have been amplified and exposed as a result of this pandemic and this economic crisis has really made clear to me the role that we need to play, the sense of urgency that our community has around bringing greater equity in so many areas, whether it's healthcare, whether it's addressing the digital divide that our community faces, advancing the rights of people with disabilities to live in the homes and communities of their choice, in the housing of their choice. There's so much that I think we've learned from this pandemic that has really set our course much clearer going into the future. And so I'm very much looking forward to taking on and to tackling the challenges that our community has faced over these last 10 months. And that's really where I think that our role is extremely important in helping to lift up, the lives of people with disabilities, to address poverty, to address accessibility, opportunity, access in so many different areas, whether it's transportation, education, what have you. That is really our role.
Great. Okay, I look forward to seeing those successes. I know in our office, we have a savings program called ABLE, stands for Achieving a Better Life
Yes.
Experience, helping giving people with disabilities a brighter future. So
Yes.
would love to partner with you on that. But as we wrap up, Karen, would you like to share any words of wisdom for the next generations of leaders here in Illinois?
Sure. Well, again, first, I'm thankful for this award. Obviously not just it's an honor for myself, but I think it's really important because it provides a rare and important opportunity for our next generation of young disabled women to see themselves in leadership positions. As we all know, the saying, "You can't be what you can't see," is real. And so I think you're really presenting an opportunity for young women to see other women in positions that they might aspire to. I think that our world on disability has really changed, and I just want to say to young people out there to just really lean into your disability identity, lean into your story as a disabled woman, and see it as a strength, see it as an asset, not as a liability, but something that really needs to be brought to the table, to be brought to the workplace, because your representation makes your workplace not just more diverse, but stronger because of what you're bringing. So that would be my message.
Well, Karen, thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for joining us today, for your insights and for your leadership in Illinois. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's an honor.